Well, hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, as always, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is nationally recognized franchise consultant and international best-selling author, Mr. Pete Gilfillan. So in the US, COVID-19 has led to what's been dubbed the Great Resignation of 2021, right? Millions of people, from frontline workers to senior executives, voluntarily calling time on their jobs. Well, maybe the great reimagination is a better way of looking at the situation. So, can you see yourself starting something new, perhaps a side business? I bet you can, which is why you've tuned in to hear Pete talk to you about the wonderful option, franchise ownership. Stick around because over the next hour, you'll learn something, actually everything you need to know about it from someone who really knows. Pretty important stuff, and part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with trusted voices, people like Pete, who we can listen to and learn from and make the right career next step for you. Well, I'm always excited to bring on my guest today, Pete Gilfillan, as I said, the international best-selling author of Hire Yourself. He has a proven track record of changing people's lives. In fact, over the years, he has helped hundreds and hundreds of ExecuNet members explore franchise ownership and successfully reset their career. With that brief intro, welcome back, Pete, to the ExecuNet stage. They are all yours.
Thank you, Tony. What a great introduction. Again, my name is Pete Gilfillan. I'm an entrepreneur, a franchise consultant, the international best-selling author of the book Hire Yourself, but most importantly, I'm a proud corporate escapee. I'm super excited for today's webinar. We're going to encourage you to develop a plan to set up a side business while keeping your corporate job. I'm going to teach you about franchising, and I'm going to answer a lot of your common questions about franchising. But the question I have for you is, if you are a corporate executive that is looking to take control of your destiny, to create career and income security, to build a supplemental income, or maybe just diversify your assets and income, or maybe it's just to set up a plan to escape the corporate world, or just to live life on your terms, then this is the webinar for you. So I encourage you to stay tuned. All right, but I think I'm a lot like you guys. My story, I was raised to basically say, go to college, get a job with a big company, and that's what I did. That's what you were supposed to do. And so I got a job with Ford. I got on the executive fast track, and I found myself after several years running a large organization for Ford. And back in 2006, late 2006, my boss called me up and said, hey, listen, we want to offer you a separation package. Voluntary separation package. And I thought, what are you talking about? I've given my life to Ford. I grew up with Ford. Ford is my life. I bleed blue. And you're asking me to leave? I couldn't believe it. I went to talk to my wife, and we decided that, heck, maybe it's time for us to take a new path, take control of our life. So basically, I took a little time off, and I basically found another job. And I basically took a job with a company called Terex. I was thinking about being an entrepreneur, but my wife wanted me to take a job. So I took this job with Terex, and I found myself traveling 5-6 days a week. And it was a miserable lifestyle from the standpoint is that my wife was taking care of the 4 kids. So she was managing all that. My kids aren't happy because I'm not around. I'm traveling, you know, that life. And so one day I decided to give it up. I just walked away from my high 6-figure income, and I decided to start investing in businesses. So I invested in a master franchise. I invested in my franchise consulting business, but I got to tell you, it was the best thing I ever did. I'm living life on my terms right now. I pinch myself every day, but I think a little bit about is I took the hard path. I took the hard path from the standpoint is that maybe I should have just kept that corporate job and eased into or started a side franchise so that I could develop that plan or that supplemental income that would allow me to eventually, go into being an entrepreneur. But I did it the hard way. It was the best thing I ever did. But today we're going to talk about this idea of maybe you start the business on the side while you're keeping the corporate income. Now, I get the opportunity to work with executives all over the country every year. And I hear them, they want to take back their lives. And so I wrote this book called Hire Yourself. And it's really about this idea of helping others, helping specifically executives take control of their destiny, to build wealth and to live life on their terms. So my promise to you today is I'm going to encourage you to set up a side business. I'm going to teach you all about the executive model, semi-absentee franchise ownership model. I'm going to answer a lot of your common questions, and we're going to give you some great resources at the end of the webinar. So when we talk about what we're going to cover today, a ton of stuff. I'm going to tell you what is franchise, what's trending in franchise. We're going to talk about investment levels. How do you get capital? How much capital do you need? We're going to talk about this idea. Can I replace my corporate level income with a franchise? So got a lot of great stuff. But let's start with this. Are you a 50 plus corporate executive? And why are more corporate executives taking the path of franchise ownership? Well, for the future of corporate executives, it's going to be tough, right? We're seeing more layoffs. We're seeing more downsizing. I talk to executives every day. I talked to somebody yesterday that because of supply chain issues, his company had to reorganize, and basically he was a senior level executive. He was getting paid, one of the higher employees got pushed out, right? That's an example. We're just going to continue to see layoffs or downsizing. And we're seeing underemployment, contract work from that standpoint. So consulting, where they get rid of you, they bring you back as a contract worker, because then there's no obligation on either side. And then certainly, I grew up in the world where careers were 30 years. You were expected to run with a company for 30 years and retire with them. Well, that's not the case now. Every 4 years, people are changing jobs. I suspect it's even sooner than that. So it's a very different world out there. And there is increasing age and unemployment discrimination. So if you're in your 50s, you got a target on your back. Hopefully you know that, right? Here's an interesting stat. 50% of 50 plus corporate executives are forced into retirement before they're ready. Again, 50% of 50 plus year old corporate executives are pushed into retirement before they're ready. They're pushed out of their company. And then here's even a sadder figure. They're in their prime. And basically, of the people that get pushed out into retirement, the 10% of them that get another job get a higher salary or the same salary. Simply put, so they get pushed out. If they go get another job, they only have a 10% chance of getting a higher income or the same income. So why are corporate executives investing in franchises? So, reasons to start a franchise on the side business. Well, you can leverage your corporate income while starting the side business, right? You can diversify your assets. So you take a little money out of the stock market, leverage it into your own business. It's a way to create an income stream to build wealth, but also to protect yourself from future layoffs. So you're almost creating that career and income security that we talked about. And it is a way to build a bridge to escape the corporate world, or simply put, to start living life on your terms, right? Because jobs are no longer income security, right? It's not a guarantee. As a business owner, you're never laid off, you're never given a separation package, and you're not furloughed. You have income security when it's your business. Now, I always ask corporate executives, okay, we're talking today, why would you consider the path of being a franchise owner? And this is what they say. They say, Pete, I want to take control of my destiny. Or independence would be another word. I want to create an income. I want to build an asset that maybe I can sell, or it can be a legacy for my family. I want to be my own boss where I make the decisions. I want to make a difference. Or another way they'd say it is, I want to make an impact in my community. I want to be engaged. I want to be rewarded for my hard work. Heck, if I'm going to be putting all the hard work in, I don't want a big corporation being rewarded. I want to be the one rewarded for my hard work. I want to build and lead a team. I just want to be happy. I want to be satisfied. I want to be proud of what I'm doing. I want to create a family business where maybe I include my spouse, significant other, my kids in the business. And I want to leverage my personal capital into something that I am building. I want to beat ageism. I don't want anybody to clock me out when they think I am done. I want to decide when I'm done at whatever age it may be. And I want to create career and income security so nobody can mess with me going forward. So what is franchising and what is trending in the franchise businesses? So a franchise in its very simplest form, you as the franchisee are buying the rights to use a business model, the systems, the process, and procedures from a franchisor. You pay a franchise fee for those rights, and it's usually like a 10-year partnership agreement. That franchisor is going to continue through the life of that agreement, provide support to you. We will call that just ongoing support. They may give you assistance, coaching, all that kind of stuff, support. And for that support, you are going to pay a royalty. A royalty is usually a percentage of revenue, like 5, 6, 7%, something like that. And when we talk about franchising and the way in which it's growing, franchising is booming. And when I get up and I speak about franchising, everybody says Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, and McDonald's. But franchising is in almost every industry. There are over 3,000 franchise companies out there in almost every industry. And I use the example in my book. It touches every aspect of our life, our daily life, right? So you get up on a Saturday, you go do a workout. Yeah, that's a franchise. You stop off and get a cup of coffee. Yeah, that's a franchise. You pick up your dry cleaning on your way home. Yeah, that's a franchise. You get your oil change on the way home. Yeah, that's a franchise. You pick up your kids, take them to the martial arts class. Yeah, that's a franchise. You stop off and get a sub sandwich after the martial arts class. Yeah, that's a franchise. You pull up in your driveway. There's a van there. They're washing the windows of your house. Yeah, that's a franchising. Franchises touches every aspect of our life. And it has a huge impact in the United States economy. There are over 800,000 franchise establishments out there today. They're employing over 8.5 million people, and the contribution to the US GDP is a little under $500 billion. Franchising is booming. And there are two basic business models when we talk about franchising. So there are service-based franchises that come to our home and provide a product or service, or our business, so service-based businesses. And there are facility-based franchises. So think of that strip mall down the street. Somebody takes 2,000 square feet where they create a place where you can get a haircut, get a sub sandwich, get a massage, take a Pilates class. We see a lot of activity in franchising around home improvement right now. It's just because I think there's so much pent up demand, professional services, and also personal services, as we have now over 10,000 people turning 65 each day. The numbers are explosive. And so there's a lot of energy around in-home care, senior living locations, estate sales, as these baby boomers transition into 65 plus. And then facility-based franchise concepts, we see a lot of activity around health and wellness and beauty. And somebody once told me it's all about that we can control how we feel about ourselves, whether it's health and wellness and beauty and stuff like that. We can't control if we got a pandemic. We can't control if we're employed unless we have our own business like we're talking about today. But the idea is, so we see a lot of activity around health and wellness, beauty, and certainly people are always, no matter good economy, bad economy, going to be spending money on their kids, whether it's tutoring, sports activities, martial arts, preschool, stuff like that. All a lot of activity right now when it comes to franchising. So is franchise ownership right for me? And it's really important you determine what characteristics are important to you as you look to invest in a franchise. Like, what level of engagement or involvement? Do you want to be involved in the business full-time? Do you want to be involved in it semi-absentee or part-time? What's your desired income or cash flow? Do you want to manage and lead people? Do you want to grow and scale? Do you want to have one location or 3 locations? Where do you want the business to be geographically located? What's important to you in regards to status? Do you care about what other people think of the type of business you own, as long as it's a good, honest business making money? Are you comfortable with talking to people about your business development, or sales? Are you going to involve family, spouse, significant other, your kids in the business? What kind of schedule? Do you want a lifestyle business Monday through Friday? Or are you okay with a business that's open 7 days a week? What's your tolerance to risk? How long do you want to own the business? Do you want to own the business 10 years, 15 years, 5 years? How long do you want to own the business? It's also important you take an assessment of your skills and your strength, right? Do you have experience around business development and sales? Do you have experience? Are you comfortable managing and leading people? Do you have the ability to follow a process? A franchise is a process, right? It's a series of steps you follow, right? Do you like satisfying customers, or a passion to satisfy customers? And can you process change, right, and evolve over time? Because businesses, we're always evolving, we're always changing. When I was at Ford, I worked in the market rep department, or the franchising department. And we used to award the Ford franchise to dealers. And we would use what was called the 4 C's to decide if we were going to offer or grant the franchise to that individual. And we would look at capacity. What's their business experience? We would look at their character. Have they lived a life of good character? Do they have enough capital to be successful? And we looked at, do they have a history of satisfying customers, or a passion towards satisfying customers? When I wrote the book, Hire Yourself, I added the 5th C, cooperation, because when we look at investing in a franchise, it is a partnership, and we have to work together to be successful. So when we talk about business owners, I believe there are some core traits that successful business owners have. And this is, you should look at this for yourself as, hey, are you disciplined? Are you confident? Are you open-minded? Are you a self-starter? Are you competitive? You're creative? You're determined? Do you have passion? Do you have strong people skills? Do you have a solid work ethic? Now, one of the things people ask me is, hey, listen, does owning a franchise mean that I'm going to be making subs and driving around spraying lawns? And what is the best level of engagement for me? Well, we're seeing a very strong growing movement, really, where people want to work on the business, not in the business. So they don't want to be the one spraying lawns and driving around in their truck. They don't want to be the one standing behind the counter making sub sandwiches 7 days a week. They want to be working on the business. They want to be setting the overall direction, making key decisions while overseeing a manager who manages the business. And as we talk about involvement, there are kind of 3 levels of engagement. So some people decide they want to invest in a franchise where they are the artist and they're working in the business. So they are the person spraying the lawns or standing behind the counter. And in many ways, they're just trying to create a job for themselves. Most of the executives I work with fall into the executive franchise engagement, where they want to work on the business and they want to build it over time or scale it and grow it. And the executive model, you can be involved in the business full time. So although you're not spraying lawns, you're not making sub sandwiches, you're involved in the business 40 or 50 hours a week, leading it. Right? So you're not the artisan, but you're leading the business. So there's full time. The other side of the spectrum is what we call executive model, semi-absentee. A lot of executives really like this because this is where you can keep your corporate job and start the franchise on the side. You get the business going and you put the manager in place. You watch over that manager 15 or 20 hours a week. Whether it's full-time engagement or semi-absentee engagement, most of the executives I work with want to have multiple locations, multiple territories to build a larger business. So when we talk about this idea of keeping your corporate position and starting a franchise on the side, certainly we can leverage that semi-absentee business model to create that side business. We can keep our corporate position while starting the franchise. And after we get the business started, we can have a manager operating that, watching over them 15 or 20 hours a week, right? You don't have to watch over them every day, but you have to be minding it at least 15 to 20 hours a week. But what do you need to know about executive semi-absentee ownership? Well, first, it takes a lot of extra effort to launch a business, right? Time and effort. It's like a plane trying to take off from a tarmac. It's got all the weight in it from the baggage, from the people, and it takes a lot of power to get off that tarmac. And once you get off that tarmac and you're up at a certain altitude, they can actually pull down on the power or pull back a little bit, I'm told. So that's not any different. It takes a lot of power and energy to get a business off the ground. And finding and leading the operating manager will be critical to your success. That manager is going to be there when you're doing your corporate job. They're going to be in that business running it. And so you have to be, make sure you get the right person. And you always have to mind your business. Again, 15 to 20 hours a week is a pretty good expectation. Some people more, some people less. And your leadership and time management skills will have a major impact on the performance of the business. So what's it take to get into a franchise in terms of investments? And there's a significant range that it takes. So when we talk about service-based businesses, it's a simpler business. So you need a total investment will be something greater than $100,000. And it really depends on the size, the number of territories, type of equipment, working capital, all that kind of stuff. Facility-based concepts, so we're building out that facility. Well, then the total investment will be something greater than $200,000. So it could be $250,000, it could be $450,000, just depends on the size of the facility, the build out, the equipment, the furnishings, and certainly working capital. So speaking of capital, what are the capital requirements for a franchise and what are good sources of capital from that standpoint? So when we look at franchising, franchisors have a profile of franchisees they're looking for. And in these profiles, they'll list 2 financial criteria. So they'll say, number 1, to be eligible to invest in our franchise, you have to have so much liquid capital. Liquid capital in the eyes of franchising is loosely defined. It could be cash, it could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be equity in your home. You tap your home equity line. It could be retirement dollars instead of investing in stocks and bonds, actually investing in your business through what is called the ROPS program, as long as that retirement savings is not tied to your current position. So you're going to need a minimum of $75,000 to $100,000 liquid capital to qualify to invest in a franchise. And the other criteria they use is personal net worth. And the idea behind this is that net worth, by the way, is assets minus liabilities equals net worth. But net worth, you need a minimum of $100,000. And it's because if you're leasing a facility or leasing equipment, the landlord or the leasing companies need to know that you have means. So those are the two financial criteria as we look to get into a franchise. Now, good news is there's many different funding resources out there for you today. So as you look at capitalizing a business, there is certainly the SBA loan. The SBA loan is a small business administration. They really guarantee the loan for a financial institution. And those loans are anywhere from $50,000 up to $5 million. It's a variable rate. You got to have a certain amount down. You got origination fees, closing fees. There's a fair amount of fees with it. And we've seen that the SBA, based on a lot of activity, just takes longer to get that SBA loan processed. And number two is they're getting a little bit more restrictive into who they will allow to do the SBA loan. If you have a lot of liquidity, sometimes they'll basically, the financial institution will say that you're overqualified, you're too qualified to do the SBA loan. You simply put, just don't need it from that standpoint. There is the SBA Express loan, which is just a smaller loan. It's a max of $150,000. It's just a little bit easier to process, less paperwork, all that kind of stuff. There are traditional loans. Don't see much of that. You really have to have industry experience from that standpoint. So not so much there. And then there is some cases, franchisors will do in-house financing or third-party financing tied to their franchise. A lot of people leverage equity in their home because of the low interest rates right now. And people borrow money from friends and family. They have outside investors. And a lot of people are using their retirement savings through what is called the ROBS program. It is a tax compliant way. You can do this where effectively your retirement account is investing instead of stocks and bonds, actually investing in your business. Yes, you'll be an employee of your retirement account. And some people are leveraging their brokerage accounts, their portfolio accounts. They'll take a line against it. So there are many different options. And as you look to fund your business, you can leverage these resources in many different ways or different combinations. So here's an example of, say, somebody that wants to open up 3 locations of a franchise. Now, these are all fictitious numbers, but let's say for the first location, they choose to use $90,000 worth of cash, and they want to go do an SBA loan for $210,000. So a total of $300,000 leveraging cash and SBA loan. Well, location 2, maybe they decide they're going to take a little money out of their house, $90,000. They're going to take some money out of their retirement through the ROBS program. So the same investment, $300,000, just a different combination. And location 3, maybe they decide to take a little more out of retirement. Maybe now they've got some experience in the industry. They do a conventional loan. So many different options as we look at developing a funding plan for our businesses. So a question people always ask is, can I replace my corporate income through franchising? And the answer to that is the financial performance of a franchise business depends 100% on you. Again, the financial performance of a franchise business depends on you from that standpoint. And I always tell people that when we look to replace a corporate level income with a franchise, it takes a certain amount of time and scale to replace a corporate level income. And only you, through your due diligence, can determine how much time and scale it's going to take you. Now, this is a fun example. In this chart, I want you to go over look at the left-hand side, corporate executive salary. So let's just say I'm one of those guys that or gal, I want to keep my corporate position. I'm just going to have a job. I just want to have a job from that standpoint. So I have a salary of $200,000, and over the next couple of years, I get raises. So by year 5, I got a salary of $240,000. But if that company decides they are done with me, that is not an asset, that salary of $240,000. That is just a job, or simply put, my good friend would say, you're renting your income. That goes away. Now, let's just say that you decided to leave the corporate world and you were just going to invest in franchises. In fact, you're going to open up 3 locations in 5 years. And so the middle section there, let's say that you decide you're going to take the path of just doing franchises, and you open up your first location in year 1, but you don't take a salary. Year 2, you take a small salary from that, you get your second location open. Year 3, you take a small salary from unit 1, unit 2, and you open up your third. Year 4, it gets interesting. Now you're taking a salary of $100,000 from the first location, $75,000 from the second, and you get a little salary from your third. So now you're kind of bumping up against what would be a corporate level income. And then year 5, now you've got it maxed out to where maybe all three, you've got a total income or salary of $300,000. But the cool thing is that once you've built this, you have an income of, let's say, salary of $300,000, plus you have an asset that you could potentially sell as a multiple. Now, what if you decided to do the executive model semi-absentee, to keep that corporate job on the left-hand side? By year 5, you would have a salary of $240,000. You have created a supplemental income of $300,000, plus you had built an asset that you could potentially sell, or it could be a legacy for your family. Again, only you can determine how much time and scale. All the numbers are fictitious, but the idea is you can really kind of leverage with the executive model semi-absentee. So how do you find the right franchise? Well, it's important when you're looking to find a franchise that fits you to, number one, know what characteristics are important to you as you look at the business, know what you want to accomplish in the business, leverage a good investigation process for your due diligence or your validation from that standpoint. It's good to have an open mind as you go into this, because what we know to be true and what can actually be true about some businesses is totally, it can be totally wrong. So just keep an open mind. And I always tell people, have fun as you explore franchise ownership, because the idea is you get to meet some great people and learn about some real cool businesses. And remember, don't ever turn your hobby into a business. So if you like wine bars, maybe it's not a good idea to do a wine bar. There's a great example of that in the book E-Myth Revisited. It talks about a lady that loved baking, and she opened up a bakery, and I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read in the book E-Myth Revisited. So when we look to search for a franchise, bottom line is there's what I call good, better, and the best ways to do this. So a good way is there's lots of sites where you can request information about franchises, and you click a box, you give them all your information, and they're going to send you that. They may or may not sell your information to franchisors or to people that are looking to contact you about franchise opportunities. So that's good. Maybe a better way is if you see a business you like, maybe you go to their website, see if they're franchising, and reach out to them. The problem is you're going directly into their sales funnel. You don't really have anybody kind of helping you through it. So I think the best way is leveraging a franchise consultant like myself. It's a free service, and it is designed to connect you with potential franchise matches from that standpoint. So here's an example of a process that I use as I work with candidates. So one, I have them fill out a simple questionnaire. It takes about 10 minutes. It's pretty basic. Then I do a consultation call, and I just talk to them for 75 minutes. I just ask them questions. I listen. I take notes. And at the end of that conversation, I'll summarize back to them what I heard them say. So they kind of know it. I'll create a written summary. And so we've got a good understanding. And then I will go look for franchises that align with their interest. I leverage a company called FranChoice. They've been screening franchise companies for 20 years. So I'll leverage them, and I'll come back with some franchises that align with their interests, and I'll introduce those to you. And the idea behind it is that I'll be there by your side as you do your due diligence, your investigations. I'm there providing weekly coaching. I'll be giving resources. I'm just supporting you through the decision-making processes, because there's certainly a lot of fear. And as we take a look at how we investigate franchises, how you investigate franchises, called the franchise investigation procedures, there are 4 core steps that you go through. Now, over on the left-hand side, again, it's important you determine what characteristics and what you want to accomplish in the business. It's important you determine what level of engagement, what kind of business do you like, service-based business, facility-based concepts. So we want to get a good understanding of that. And then you want to get in front of some franchise companies that kind of align with that. And you go through these 4 core steps. The first step in the investigation process that you'll go through is you do an introduction call. That's where you get to know the franchisor. They're starting to get to know you. You learn about the business model. They're answering your questions. The second step is what we call the franchise disclosure document. The acronym is FDD. The franchise disclosure document is designed to ensure that you're an informed investor. They're going to give you an informed investor. They're going to basically give you a copy of this, and they'll review and answer any questions. The third step is the most important step, and that's validation. That's your opportunity to talk to franchisees without the franchisor present. I always like to say this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you find out if franchisees are happy and if they're making money. And the fourth step is what we call confirmation day, discovery day, meet the team day, all the same term. It's really about the relationship. You're making your final call on them. They're making their final call on you. Is this a potential partnership? Now, they all have other little steps in between this. They may have a marketing call, training overview, funding call, maybe do a unit economics call, all little steps by comparison. Now, things that you should consider when investigating franchises. One, look at the experience of the leadership team. Do they have experience leading a franchise system? It's one thing to be leading a single business, it's another to be running a franchise system that has 100 franchisees. What is the support that you get for your launch and training? What is the franchisee satisfaction? Are they happy? Are they making money from that standpoint? What's the image and reputation of the franchise system? What's the size of the franchise system? Do they have 5 franchisees or 400 franchisees? Is it an upcoming concept or established one? Have they been around for 6 months or they've been around for 20 years? What's the culture and the feel of the organization? Do you feel like you're joining a Fortune 1000 company or a family business? What's the marketing model? What's the model you'll use to gain or find customers? And what's the ongoing support? Do they do regional ops calls with you to go through your dashboard, all your KPIs? Do they come out and visit you? What is the support that you get? And if it's a facility-based concept, how do they help you with the site selection and the build out? And what's the financial strength of the franchise company? Now, remember that when we look to invest in a franchise, it is a partnership. It is a business partnership. And this is a mutual approval process. It takes two to form a partnership. And sometimes people forget that. They think that they're only ones doing the evaluating, the deciding, and that's just not the case. A partnership is two people. You're working together. And this is a long-term relationship. Most franchise agreements are going to be 10 years, right? So this is a long-term partnership, and you're joining a peer group of other franchisees. And this is important because you can lean on them, they can lean on you, but it's a huge asset or a benefit to being a franchisee. So these are crazy times. And is now the time with this COVID-19 to invest in a franchise? And I think there are 8 reasons why it may be a good time to invest in a franchise. Number one is that it's nice to create income security. So protect yourself from future corporate layoffs. You start building this business. It also allows you to diversify your assets and your income so that you have multiple income streams. You have your assets maybe spread over more categories, which I think it can always be good. It will allow you to have a flexible schedule and on your terms. So I think we all learned during COVID-19, it's nice to maybe work from home every once in a while if we choose to, not travel as much, have flexible hours that are on our terms. Doesn't mean we're working less, but they're on our terms opposed to somebody else's. And there's lots of pent up demand out there. So it's an opportunity to capitalize on that. And some parts of the country, I hear it's 2 years to get a pool installed. For me, it was about a year to get a sprinkler system. So bottom line is there's lots of pent up demand out there. And this is a great time to validate franchises, because I always tell people that when we're validating franchises, we can ask them the 2 COVID questions. We can ask the franchisees, how did the franchisor, your business partner, step up and help you through the last 18 months or the turbulent times? We can also ask them, how did the business model, the franchise system, stand up during the pandemic, right? Or simply put, how did the ship weather the storm? There are certainly, I believe, more resale opportunities out there. There is a softening in certain areas in regards to commercial real estate from that standpoint. And certainly there's economic resources provided federal, state, and local. So there are many different things why I think it might be a good time. But COVID-19 has created challenges, right? So I think the number one thing I hear now is finding employees or contract laborers. It's a very tight labor market. One of the trends we're seeing with franchisors is they're actually creating recruiting departments to help their franchisees find and retain their team members. Ultimately, the franchisee has to decide who they're hiring and lead them, but the franchisors are helping them find some of those skilled tradespeople. There are also, as we look at COVID-19, this idea of products and commodities. In some cases, it's tough from that standpoint. And so that has certainly come up. And then incorporating health and safety protocols. We're all kind of living in a new world. So COVID has created challenges, certainly, for businesses. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of owning a franchise? I always like to call franchising is entrepreneur light. I use that in my term in my book. And when we invest in a franchise, they're providing the operating system. You're bringing the acumen, you're bringing the leadership skills, they have the operating system. And it's like a business in a box. It's turnkey, follow step A, B, C, and D. Just do what you're supposed to do from that standpoint. And they provide training and ongoing support. And there, as I mentioned before, there's a real value to joining a franchise network. So I think that was a huge competitive advantage over the last 18 months with COVID-19, because you can lean into the other franchisees and they can lean into you and share best practices, ideas of how to overcome certain things. And I believe in franchising. It improves your chance of success. It certainly saves you time. It saves you capital because you're not spending the money to develop the idea, find the customers, what marketing works, refining the product. Somebody's already done that. And they continue to do that, the franchisor, in terms of proving out and refining the business model. So there are some very good advantages to franchising, but there's also disadvantages, right? So you're buying the rights to use that franchise model over a period of time. From some point. So you're going to pay a franchise fee. You're going to pay for that ongoing support. You're going to pay royalties and stuff like that, a percentage of your revenue. Franchise companies have restrictions. They don't want anybody destroying the brand or anything else like that. So they're going to have restrictions to make sure that nobody compromises the business. And certainly you must follow the system. It's designed for you to follow. Doesn't mean you can't make the system better, but at a minimum, we must follow the system. And it's a long-term commitment to invest in a franchise, from that point. And with business, there is always risk of failure. Now, we try to mitigate that risk with the franchise, but there is always risk with business ownership. And like with marriage, if you pick the wrong partner, it can be a very painful and rotten experience. So why do people go through the investigation of franchises and choose not to invest in a franchise? Well, some people go through this process and decide, you know what, franchise ownership is just not for them. And that's perfectly fine. That it's good they went through the process and determined that. It is a lot of work evaluating franchises, and some people don't want to put the work in to find that right business partner, that right business. And if you're not willing to put the work in, it's just not worth the go. Some people have fear and anxiety. It stops them from following their dreams. That false evidence appearing real. They just get so caught up into fear and anxiety that they don't become a franchise owner. Some people don't have the capital. Some people, and I can't believe that they still believe this, but some people believe a job equals income security. And hopefully we've debunked that thought. Some people have a maverick mentality. It's my way, the highway. A franchise isn't good for them. And sometimes friends and family kill a person's dream. I want to own a business. One gentleman I worked with literally wanted to invest in a franchise. His family did a family meeting. They voted down the idea. They told him it was not allowed to invest in a franchise. And some people are just not capable of making a decision. They go through the process. They can't make a decision. And when we can't make a decision, that is a decision. That is a no decision. Tony and I get the opportunity to do these webinars on a regular basis, and we have executives step forward and say, "Hey, I want to learn more about this." And when they go through the process, invest in franchise, and have a success story, we interview them. And here are 4 executive members that went through the process. Didn't know if franchising was right for them. They were just exploring it. They ultimately invested in a franchise and they shared their success story. So Jim Griffin, executive, decided he wanted to leave the corporate world, but he wanted to basically do an executive model, semi-absentee, where he had multiple locations. So he was involved in a full-time, but he had multiple locations in multiple states from that standpoint. Great success story. Bill was a senior level executive, wanted to leave the corporate world, decided to invest in a service-based a window washing franchise. So he did the executive model full-time from that standpoint and tells his success story. John Weiss, a successful executive and entrepreneur, had launched many different businesses. He saw that franchising may be an easier path than coming up with the big idea. So he invested in an executive model semi-absentee where he's involved in it full-time, watching over his multiple locations. And Mike Furnish, classic, I want to keep my corporate job. I want to start the franchise inside too, but up multiple side franchise locations. And he tells his success story. So all these individuals came with this idea, hey, I just want to learn about franchising and see if it's a potential path. They ultimately took the path and they shared their success stories. So if you want to learn more about this and you have more questions, I've got some great resources for you. First, we can have a quick conversation. I can learn a little bit more about you. You can tell me a little bit about what's got you interested in at least thinking about this. We can basically give you a free copy of my book, and I'll give you lots of resources as you look at this and see if it is right for you. In summary, franchising is not for everybody. But if you are a corporate executive that is looking to take control of your destiny, to create career and income security, to build that supplemental income, or just diversify your assets and income, or maybe it's a plan to get out of the corporate world, to escape all that craziness, or just live life on your terms, I strongly encourage you to look at franchising to see if it is a potential path. And you got nothing to do, or from a standpoint as it's all about just learning. So I encourage you to learn and see if it is a potential path. And with that, Tony, I'm going to turn it over for you for questions.
All right, thank you, Pete. And we do have a few questions, and we'll start with one that is typically asked in these sessions, which is, what is Pete's engagement model? Said differently, does the executive franchisee ever have to pay you directly? And if not, how do you get paid, Pete?
Yeah, so the answer is that I don't charge anything for my services. The executives I work with pay nothing. They sign nothing from that standpoint, other than investing their valuable time. So I get compensated two ways for providing the service. Number one is that franchisors pay a referral fee when a candidate invests in the franchise. So it's kind of like how an executive recruiter is compensated. And second, I hope when I do a great job that people refer me. They say, I talked to Pete, that he helped me find this franchise. You got to talk to Pete. He's the franchise guy.
Mm-hmm. So we heard the story of how you exited Ford, went into the other organization. If you had to do it all over again, Pete, what franchise in 2021 would you have invested in?
In 2021,
Yeah.
I would invest in a health and wellness franchise. I just see so much activity around it. I think that everybody is trying to take back their lives, and we learned during this last 18 months that that makes us feel good about ourselves. It allows us to have a healthier lifestyle, and so I would invest in some form of health and wellness franchise.
Looking ahead to 2022, Pete, do you see that industry remaining a compelling avenue for would-be franchisees?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I've got a lot of executives that are looking at investigating or investing in health and wellness. But again, it's what's right for people, and so that's the good thing is there are so many different franchise concepts, and we're again taking a step back and understanding what's important to you. What do you want to accomplish with this? What characteristics are important, and then matching it up with businesses that kind of align with that. So what may be great for Pete may not be great for Tony, but that's what we go through with the process to find that out.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I get to talk to a lot of senior level people in my role at ExecuNet, and I will tell you, Pete, that lately I've had conversations with a lot of IT executives who are tired of corporate life and want to explore alternatives, including owning a side business. You work with a lot of IT execs as well, I'm sure. What are you hearing from them? Where does their interest lie? And it's not the kind of industry that you naturally think of when you think of franchise ownership. So where do they ultimately go in their chase for the better career life?
Yeah, so I think I do work with a lot of tech people, tech executives, and it's a industry that there's a lot of pressure, and I understand high pressure industries, but I think what they're looking for is something where they can bring their business acumen and their leadership skills to the table. And I always tell them that there are really no tech vice president of technology franchises. Right? That's not the case. What we're looking to do is to take their leadership skills, their business acumen, and apply it to a business that has enough volume and they can go do something, whether it's a service or a facility-based franchise, that it has enough mainstream revenue or the ability to build something larger. And so it can range from that they decide to own a painting franchise to owning a fitness franchise. So it really kind of depends on them, but it's not for lack of better terms, an IT franchise.
Right. You laid out very nicely in detail, Pete, the investment requirements. Has the government made it easier for would-be franchisees to find the liquid capital and to invest in franchise ownership?
Well, I think for the standpoint is that the ROPS program that allows you to use your retirement dollars in a tax compliant way, that is friendly for people to be able to use their retirement dollars. When we talk about the SBA loans, again, the SBA, Small Business Administration, is not writing the loans. All they're doing is guaranteeing that loan for the financial institution that writes that for that business. And that's where we've seen a little bit of tightening, I guess would be the best way to say. There's funds available, plenty of funds available, but for people that have a lot of capital, they're basically saying, hey, we're not so sure you actually need this. It should probably go to somebody that maybe needs the capital a little bit more. And we're just seeing a little bit more time to go through the process. So in many ways, there is a lot of capital. The SBA is just a little bit more onerous to go through that process.
Mhm. So when a franchise company has higher startup fees, say up to $1 million, are the investors going in more with their own capital for those models, or can you get loans that are much higher value?
Yeah, so if you were going to do a franchise and it was a total investment of $1 million, you only have to come up with a portion of it. So you may need, a couple $100,000 of liquid capital, and given the right situation, you could do like an SBA loan or something like that.
Mhm. Talk to us, Pete, if you can. I know this is an awfully big question to ask you about the success and failure rate for franchises. I know it probably varies based on not just industry, but also how much you apply yourself as a franchisee, right? But what is your sense about those success and failure rates?
Yeah, so we just went through a really tough time, and I was just listening to a franchisor present a little bit, and they talked about their industry, and they basically said there were a lot of mom and pops that just had a really hard time and didn't make it through the pandemic, and franchises tended to have a little better chance of that. So it really kind of depends on the individual. It depends on the franchise system. So there isn't any kind of universal number, but it is really, I believe, tied to this idea of what you do with the business, because you can take the exact same business model. Some person can be wildly successful with it, and somebody else really struggles or they fail from that standpoint. So it's what you do when you come in with the business model.
Mhm. So if you're managing the business from the outside as a semi-absentee owner, Pete, talk to us more about what you do from day to day, hour to hour. And if you're, for example, a busy corporate executive who's managing this quote side hustle, how much time does it really take to keep a close enough eye on what's happening back at the franchise?
Yeah, and again, it depends on your time management skills, your leadership skills. But I use the 15 to 20 hours a week. I think that's a really good starting point.
Okay.
And I think you and I have interviewed executives, on our success calls, where they've invest less time, right? Or they shared with us that, hey, on their way to their corporate job in the car, they call their manager and basically go through the priorities for the day. And they may check in with them at lunchtime, and then they may call them on the way home. They may stop off one night to go take a look or go in on the weekend and stuff like that. So it's really about what the cadence they're doing in terms of leading or managing that kind of operating manager.
Mhm. You've coined the term entrepreneur light. We've talked about franchises as being a quote, a business in a box. So the question is, given those two scenarios, what is the single greatest misstep that you've seen a franchise owner make?
I think there's a couple.
Mhm.
The first one is that they invest in a franchise system and they don't follow the system they invested, right? So at a minimum, you follow the system, and you go, holy cow, what do you mean they don't follow the system? But they don't follow the system because they think they know better than the system, and so at a minimum, we follow the system. We always make it better, but that's the first thing. Number two is that sometimes people think a franchise, because you got the systems, the process, the procedures, the support, that you don't have to work very hard. And bottom line is there's nothing further from the truth. You have to work hard to get a business going. That is just the reality of it. I think number three is, and we saw this during the pandemic, is this idea that as a business owner, you're a problem solver, right? And we can either choose to solve problems or we can choose to, blame it on somebody else. And the best example I can give you is a pandemic story where there were these two restaurants. They were in the same town. And one restaurant, when they started locking things down, basically furloughed their employees. Oh boy, you can't do anything about this. The other local restaurant basically went out, bought a bunch of lumber, created an outside seating area, and created a lane where people could do pickup. Right. One, obviously didn't make it. The other one was thriving, cars down the street. It's about figuring out and solving problems. That's what we do as entrepreneurs. We don't blame it on anybody else. We're in the situation. We got to figure it out. We make it happen.
Okay. I'm going to start to wrap this up and leave a few minutes for you to just share some final thoughts. But Pete, thank you for making time for sharing your insight. Everyone who tuned in, there were a lot of you. Thank you so much for your questions. And if something has occurred to you here at the end, or I bet something will when the mics are down, by all means, follow up. Kim sent the link earlier where you can sign up to speak with Pete. Again, it's at no cost to you. And if you choose to move forward, there's no direct cost to you when it comes to paying Pete. So take full advantage of him and ask him whatever you wish, and he'd be more than happy to answer your questions and help you make the right choice for you. So with that, any final thoughts, Pete, as we officially wrap up today's session?
Yeah, as we get older and we're senior level executives, we have a target on our back, and we just have to know that the world is changing very quickly. And I just encourage people that if you are thinking about or wanting to take control of your destiny or create career and income security or build that supplemental income, diversify your assets, your income, set up a plan to kind of get out of this crazy corporate world, or just live life on your terms, I encourage you to sign up and let's just have a quick conversation. I can help you in any way I can, but I'm going to give you some great resources.
Terrific. Thanks again, Pete. Thank you all. Look forward to seeing you at the next session of ExecuNet Masterclass. Bye for now.